welcome to ITV News Anglia.
Tonight's main stories on a national day of reflection.
You must stay at home.
A year on from that first dramatic lockdown announcement, a moment to pause. How the region has marked the day our world changed forever.
He wants to be back behind the wheel. The ambulance driver told COVID would kill him says he feels guilty that he survived when so many others didn't.
I'm so sorry to them. I really am, because you've lost valuable members of your family, and I'm here.
Also tonight, ready to welcome back customers, but is there enough support for workers who are anxious about returning after lockdown?
And find out how you can explore some historic tunnels under a Fenland market town from the comfort of your own home.
Hello from Rob and me, welcome to the programme.
First tonight, it's been a year like no other. On this day, 12 months ago, an unprecedented set of lockdown restrictions were announced across the East.
In an address to the nation from Downing Street, the Prime Minister orders us all to stay at home to contain the coronavirus outbreak.
Well, today's been a day of reflection marked across the region. In a moment, we'll hear from Tanya Mercer in Bury St Edmunds and our political correspondent Emma Hutchinson in Westminster. But first, a look back 1 year ago.
Coronavirus. Yes, the Health Secretary has warned that failing to observe social distancing measures could lead to people dying.
The first day of indefinite school closures right across the country today.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson will make an address to the nation tonight at 8:30 p.m.
The NHS is facing the greatest challenge that it has seen in its 70 years.
I didn't think I'd make it out alive from the hospital, which was crazy.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
The sober Boris Johnson there a year ago today. Well, now let's go to Tanya Mercer, who's in Bury St Edmunds. Tanya, quite a milestone we're marking.
It really is. Yes, this has been a year like no other. Difficult, draining, full of emotion as we've lost loved ones, our sense of security, jobs and time. But it's also been a year of extraordinary human compassion and endeavour, from frontline services and community volunteers to the incredibly innovative ways people have carried on in the face of adversity, many finding a strength that perhaps they didn't know they had. Well, I've been spending the day reflecting with people on the year that's happened since that momentous announcement about the first lockdown.
Sometimes it feels like a dream. It doesn't feel real. The year has gone so quickly, and yet there's been months that we couldn't see that light in the end of the tunnel. And it's been tough.
Tanya has seen this year unfold in Bury as her cafe business, job as a hospital worker and role as a mother has changed beyond recognition. She clearly remembers the worry she felt as the country went into lockdown.
It was extremely emotional. We are very young business and we've been doing our best to keep our head above the water, and then being told that you had to close down, not knowing how long for. And we decided to take a day at a time, and that's how we coped.
They have survived, she says, thanks to the community coming together. Adam Brooks Charitable Trust has been handing out daffodils to staff at the hospital today.
This morning I was here at 6 to 5 handing out daffodils as people went home from long shifts, tired, emotional, and really grateful and thankful, and telling us that it had put a smile on their faces. So it really does make a difference. A bunch of flowers, a kind word, and an opportunity to take that time out.
And our frontline NHS staff need all the support. 40% have mental health issues, even post-traumatic stress disorder, because of what they have been and are still going through. It's estimated that in January alone, people working in intensive care worked 1 million hours overtime.
I think everyone's tired. They've had an enormous psychological burden. And there's data that suggests that their psychological well-being has been harmed as a result of what they've seen and experienced over the last year.
Across the region, many are mourning loved ones taken by the virus. At midday, there was a minute's silence to remember. And here at St Edmundsbury Cathedral, 200 glass teardrops have been installed above the altar.
So at this time of lament and reflection, when we, for the last year, behind closed doors often have been crying tears of sadness and frustration and anger, but also sometimes tears of relief at being helped when we've been in need. We've done that individually, and today, on this day of reflection, we do that corporately.
Some have been lucky to survive this dreaded virus, including Erica Donnelly from Southend, who we filmed at Royal Papworth in January. It's been a difficult year for so many, but we've also seen a great community spirit, with people coming together to help the lonely and vulnerable, a renewed respect for frontline services with the claps for carers, Captain Sir Tom raising millions walking in his garden, parents becoming teachers through homeschooling, and many learning a new way of working from home. There have been empty streets as shops stayed closed, and daily press briefings at Downing Street.
Everybody's been incredible, and I think we all had to do what we have to do, our part, to cope, to survive this year, because it has been unknown, which is the scariest part of it all. And I would like to think that we walk away stronger and have that respect to each other and that hard work, because we all contributed towards it. I would like to think we learn a lot.
Strength and friendship, the support that has got so many of us through this year of adversity and loss. Well, here in Bury St Edmunds today, people have been coming to the cathedral, and I'm joined now by the very Reverend Joe Hawes, who's the Dean of the Cathedral. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We heard you talking earlier in the service, obviously, about how difficult a year it's been, but we've also learned a huge amount as a community, haven't we?
We've learned that what matters is each other. We're each other's family, friends, colleagues. So when physically being together was removed, we learned how to get online to be with each other on Zoom, and endless screen meetings. And we've done at the cathedral, we've learned how to live stream services, skills we never knew we had, how to learn quickly. And we've learned that the basics matter, like food and feeding the homeless. We know that neighbourhood matters, making sure your neighbours are okay. And we've learned these things in the town and cathedral. So we've learned to be ingenious.
And there's also a message of hope for the future, isn't there?
Well, I certainly hope so, because we've got a beer festival in the cathedral in August, so I hope that's going to be happening. I think hope about opening the building up, opening up Bury St Edmunds, opening up our shops and our pubs and our communities, and remembering not to take anything for granted again. The simple joy of sitting in a pub garden and coming to the cathedral for a service or concert. Simple joys that we used to take for granted.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that. And things are indeed brightening up. We've, of course, got vaccine rollout continuing apace. The summer months are just round the corner. And, of course, hopefully those restrictions will be soon being released. And today in Bury St Edmunds there was an announcement from the Theatre Royal, which has been struggling like many arts organisations over the past 12 months, but they will be opening on the 21st of May. So there are chinks of light lightening the darkness of the past year.
Thank you, Tanya.
Well, let's go to Westminster now, and our political correspondent Emma Hutchinson. Emma, a year where the decisions politicians have made have affected us more than ever.
Yes, that's right. When Boris Johnson first made that request for us all to stay at home a year ago, neither he nor any other politician would have imagined that for most of the past 12 months that instruction would remain in place, and that today, as we mark this anniversary, that instruction is still in place. Today, in the House of Commons, MPs mark this anniversary by observing that minute silence at noon, as so many others did across our region, to remember those who have lost their lives during this pandemic. And in the past hour at Downing Street, Boris Johnson has held a press conference with a very sombre tone again.
Month after month, our collective fight against coronavirus was like fighting in the dark against a callous and invisible enemy, until science helped us to turn the lights on and to gain the upper hand. And I want to renew my thanks to everyone responsible for the astounding vaccine rollout, which has enabled us to protect more than 28 million people across the whole of the United Kingdom.
Emma, MPs will vote this week on extending the coronavirus restrictions.
Yes, that's right. This vote will be on Thursday, and in a sense this is about firstly ending those restrictions in that MPs will vote on the roadmap which will see restrictions eased over the next 3 months, but it's also about giving the government the power for the next 6 months to put restrictions back in place if necessary.
A lot of the powers the government have had throughout this pandemic, it doesn't come easily to me voting for resource, but I think it's been necessary. I hope and believe that there's going to be no disruption in terms of a roadmap. I can't see any reason to believe that there's going to be any significant delay to the stages in front of us at the end of this month, at the middle of next month, and the 21st of June. But I do think, after the last year we've had, we can't rule anything out.
So we do seem to be on a path back to more normality, but we certainly aren't there yet.
Emma, thank you very much indeed for that.
Now, as we've heard, today's National Day of Reflection marks exactly 1 year since the first lockdown was announced.
Since then, millions of people have been affected by a close bereavement that have been unable to grieve properly. Otis Holmes has this.
Life changed like nobody had expected.
Lockdown for 3 weeks enforced by the police.
Restrictions in place to keep us safe, impacting our lives and how we grieve for the hundreds of thousands who sadly lost theirs. For those helping people with loss like Jenny Knight, who works in North Reps in Norfolk, the changes have added to what's already a tough part of life.
People have got more time to kind of think about grieving, but actually they haven't got the rituals. So your funerals have been either socially distanced with a very few people. You have got to sort of cut people out of attending, and you have a very brief service and you can't have a wake, and people have found it incredibly difficult.
You can't have the contact. My family couldn't hug me, and I needed a hug.
After being together for more than 50 years, Sandra Marchant was apart from her husband Richard when he died in a care home in June. Lockdown meant she couldn't visit, and his dementia made phone calls very difficult. But her local church community helped them connect online, giving her the chance to say a final goodbye.
Within about 3 or 4 hours of that, me seeing him online, they rang me to say he was dead. So that was very hard. But I actually did see him, and also the technology has allowed me to get in onto church meetings every Sunday, so it's been amazing for me. Without that, I don't know how I would have got through this.
To you. Together, they were the Chuckle Brothers, a double act that entertained for decades. But Paul was left devastated when his brother Barry died in 2018.
To me, he was the funniest guy on stage. He made me laugh all the time. I used to make him laugh too. We'd never do a show without having a good laugh. It's not just losing a brother, it was losing, my life partner really, work-wise and everything. I grieved, I let it out, let it all out, which you have to do when you lose somebody. It's there's no other way. Talk about it, keep the memory going.
Millions of Britons have lost loved ones, and they've had to cope with grief during the pandemic. They've not been able to have the normal coping mechanisms or support networks because of lockdown. And we want to use this opportunity to say to everyone in Britain, let's reflect on loss and also to reflect on hope.
And at 8 this evening, people are being asked to go on their doorsteps or to their windows to shine a light as a way of looking towards a brighter future. Otis Holmes, ITV News.
Some more of your day's news now, and a former Norwich City footballer has told MPs not enough is being done to protect players from the risks of heading the ball. Chris Sutton's father Mike died last year with dementia, a condition specialists believe could be linked to repeated heading of the ball. Today, Sutton gave evidence to a select committee hearing on concussion in sport.
Hundreds of players have died, my father included. He wasn't a big household name. He died, and thousands, and we're not just talking about the professional game here, we don't even know what has happened in the amateur game. And this is something we need to deal with, and deal with now.
Latest unemployment figures in the region are up by 20,000 compared with a year ago. There were 130,000 people out of work in the November to January quarter in the east of England. That represents just over 4% of the workforce.
You're watching ITV News Anglia. Thanks for joining us. Here's what's still to come.
In at the deep end, the hopes and fears of returning to work after a long furlough.
Going underground, how you can explore this extraordinary secret network of tunnels under a Finland town.
And after a cold and chilly start first thing this morning, eventually did brighten up by this afternoon, where we saw highs of 13 degrees. But what does the rest of the week have in store? I'll have all the details coming right up in the next 15 minutes. We'll see you then.
But before that, 9 months ago, East of England ambulance driver Nigel Fitzmaurice had just won the fight of his life.
Told by doctors he may not survive, against the odds, Nigel beat COVID after 5 weeks in hospital. And shortly after returning home to Clacton, he was walking unaided.
Back then, he dreamed he'd soon be behind the wheel of an ambulance again. But the 57-year-old says he's now realised he's only just starting on his long road to recovery. Nigel's been speaking to our reporter, Charlie Frost.
When I first came out, I had difficulty trying to sleep because I generally believed I wasn't going to wake up. And then just 3 weeks ago I had a breakdown, major breakdown, totally lost it basically. I'm okay now and I'm on the mend, but at the end of the day the things are all post-COVID.
Last summer, Nigel spent 5 weeks in hospital. Put into a coma, doctors found a bleed on his brain. 2 new drug treatments were tried, but in the end it was a specialist ventilator at Papworth Hospital in Cambridge that saved him. Back then, he and his partner Lisa were just basking in his miraculous recovery. But now the reality of what he's been through is really hitting home.
And the doctors can't even work out what happened with myself, even now. How I managed to get through what I did.
Do you feel guilty about recovering?
I don't, because people have lost family members through COVID, and to me, I'm so sorry to them. I really am, because you've lost valuable members of your family, and I'm here.
Both ambulance drivers, Nigel and Lisa, met 6 years ago. She was the one told he may never wake up.
When I spoke to you before, your relationship with Lisa, the love there, it was very clear to see, and you know how strong that is. How has this impacted your relationship?
In a lot of respects we are stronger, but I'm a different person. I personally think that bits of me when I was in hospital have been lost. Lisa jokingly said to me, I want my Nigel back. And I do want that to happen, because that's very important. She needs my support as much as I need hers, and so and I will get that, and I will bring that back.
Despite his clear setbacks, Nigel still dreams of driving ambulances again one day. He, like his colleagues, has had his first vaccine, and that, along with counselling, is boosting his confidence in a brighter future, free from the constraints COVID has put on his life. Charlie Frost, ITV News in Clacton in Essex.
Now, ITV News has seen research which suggests large numbers of businesses are planning to cut or freeze the amount of money they spend on staff well-being this year.
It means support helplines and mental health first aid courses could be reduced to try to save cash. It comes as thousands of people prepare to head back into the workplace after months of furlough.
But as Matt Price reports, many firms in our region are doing everything they can to help their staff readjust.
At Riverside Leisure Centre in Chelmsford, they're preparing to welcome back staff after a long lockdown. Training is taking place here to make sure everyone feels comfortable and confident about coming back into the workplace.
The management team have been weekly meeting virtually to discuss obviously the openings and to keep abreast of what's going on. It's vitally important that we do that just to alleviate any anxieties and just to reassure the staff that we're coming back, and when we do come back, we're coming back ready to go.
But as so many people prepare to head back to work, we've seen research which shows 64% of businesses will either freeze or decrease the amount they spend on well-being this year. That's things like mental health, first aid courses. 27% of employees report feeling anxious about work, and 12% say they don't feel supported by their employer. The thought of heading back into work is hugely overwhelming for so many people. That packed office building or a bus or train into the town centre. There are fears the COVID crisis could lead to a new pandemic, one of poor mental health. You have some treatment, do you feel a bit better? For Laura Mannering, it goes further than that. She's experienced a number of depressive episodes throughout her life.
It's just like a feeling that there's no joy in anything. And this feels like there's no way out when you're going through it.
Now on furlough and preparing to return to work, she tells me she's anxious.
I started the job in March, and then lockdown and coronavirus happened at the end of March, so I never really got into the swing of the job. So I don't even know that I'm going to be able to get into the swing of the job, and I'm going to be good at it, and I'm going to be able to rise to the role.
The pandemic has had a massive personal and professional impact. People have experienced loss, and they are yet to process that and fully grieve. People have also been significantly socially isolated and have had limited social contact. All of this is likely to have an impact on the process of returning to work.
For many, it's been 12 months away from work with little interaction. Business leaders hope that when staff return, the COVID crisis won't lead to a mental health emergency too. Matt Price, ITV News.
Right, a quick bit of football for you now. There's a couple of games in League Two tonight, and both are big matches at the wrong end of the table. Colchester will be hoping to ease their relegation worries with a win over promotion chasing Tranmere. Any slip-up would allow second from bottom Southend to close the gap. They're also at home to Walsall.
Now the ITV Evening News is at 6:30. Here's a look at what's coming up with Mary.
Coming up on the programme, the Queen leads the tributes as the nation remembers those lives lost in the COVID pandemic. National silence marked a year since the start of the first lockdown. The Queen said it's a time to reflect, but also to look to a brighter future. Also ahead, more horrific tales of housing horrors as tenants tell us yesterday's shocking report from Croydon is not a one-off. Plus the 10-year-old who spent a year in his tent and now wants others to join him. All that and more at 6:30. Join me then.
Next, we want to let you know about some changes to the regional news service you'll receive from next month if you watch us on Sky or Freesat with a standard definition SD-only set-top box.
Typically, they're the older ones than 10 years, and the changes affect a very small number of people. So if you have an SD satellite receiver, please head over to our website where we've put up all the information you need, all the details on itv.com/Anglia.
There are no changes on Freeview and Virgin Media. Satellite HD is also unaffected.
Well, finally from us tonight, away you can explore secret tunnels beneath the streets of a Fenland market town without having to leave your home.
Yes, a team from the University of Lincoln has joined forces with Fenland District Council to create virtual tours of some of the underground vaults and passageways in Wisbech. Stuart Leith has the story.
There's a lot of history to explore around the streets of Wisbech, but it also has hidden depths. And now you can take a virtual tour around these tunnels under the market town. 3D laser scans have been used to create these images for a project called Wisbech Underground. These are the cellars under the Rose and Crown Hotel.
I think there's lots of sort of myths and ideas about underneath the town. There's lots of tunnels that all link up and smugglers' caves and things like that. And although we've not found any evidence of that, what we have discovered is there's lots of really interesting cellars and vaults and undercrofts and crypts and cells that it's just interesting to have a look at different buildings and different histories.
One of the fascinating things they found while doing the survey down here under the Rose and Crown is that part of the cellars date from the early medieval period, which means they're much older than the current hotel building above us.
Rooms under the town's sessions house were also scanned to create a 3D map. The floors above are now a school, but these heavy doors leading to side chambers give a hint about the building's history.
It was the courthouse for the town, so it's now a school, but the cells beneath are still all completely intact, and they're a really good example of the original parts of the building. And what's really interesting about it is there's a door with lots of layers of graffiti, which will probably put there by people waiting to go to trial, and there's a little gallows on there and everything.
Even when we emerge from the COVID lockdown, these tunnels won't be open to the public, so these virtual tours are the only way to explore some of the town's secret subterranean spaces. Stuart Leeds, ITV News, Wisbech.
Some amazing history there. Right, Chris is here with the weather. Lovely sunshine again today. What temperature did it get to?
So first thing this morning we looked at temperatures as low as -3 degrees Celsius, and today's high 13 degrees at Santon Downham. And it's very standard to get temperatures similar to this during the spring season, because the reason is it's very cold overnight still, the land's still very cold, so the temperatures fall away underneath those clearing skies, but then that strong spring sunshine gets to work. So we've seen highs today 13 degrees Celsius.
Beautiful blossom, and my tulips are coming up as well, so spring is in the air.
Spring really is in the air, actually, Vic, and it's interesting you mentioned about flowers, because that's how I'm going to talk about what I'm going to talk about this evening. And because those real variations in the temperature, the flowers have to be really susceptible to this change, and that's something that they've inside crocuses and snowdrops and things like daffodils. They've got an extra protein inside their stems which prevents them from basically the water freezing.
So frost, yeah.
Exactly, so it acts a bit like an antifreeze, and what happens is inside the tips of snowdrops they have a very hard tip, and it allows them to puncture through the frozen ground. So they're very well designed for dealing with these very cold temperatures and these big extremes in temperatures too. So we've seen some lovely photos across much of the region through today, and obviously it's nice to see some blossom as well on those trees. It really is. Should we take a look at the forecast? Here you go.
Greater Anglia sponsors ITV Anglia Weather.
So it was a rather cold start first thing this morning. Temperatures early doors dropped down to around -3 degrees Celsius in some areas, but still with some gorgeous photos sent in from our viewers here. I'll just step out of the way so you can enjoy this in all its glory. Sunrise earlier on today in Suffolk. We did see some rather dense mist and fog patches. They did soon lift and break to reveal a fairly fine day though. Yes, we've seen some sunshine, a little bit hazy of sunshine at times, where we've seen those top temperatures rising around Celsius. Now we've still got the cloud cover as we go through this evening and overnight, so with a few clear breaks here and there, but with that cloud cover, unlike last night, I'm not expecting temperatures to be as low, so probably holding up to around 4, maybe 5 degrees Celsius there. In the prone spots, it could be dropping down to around 1 or 2 degrees. So it will be a rather cold start yet again for tomorrow morning. There will still be a few bright spells, but this cloud here is a fairly weak weather front. It just meanders its way southwards, so some light outbreaks of rain on that by the afternoon, possibly 1 or 2 heavier moderate bursts towards the west. But I think for many drying up and staying dry, it will brighten up across the likes of Cambridgeshire. Top temperatures 11-12 degrees Celsius, that's 54 Fahrenheit. Now here times of high water, we're looking at Great Yarmouth there at 5:05 tomorrow morning and 11 minutes past 5 tomorrow evening. As for Thursday, a sunny day to come with a few bright spells and scattered showers. Again, some of the showers could be on the heavy side, and the wind's starting to strengthen too from the south and the west. Top temperatures 13 degrees Celsius, 55 Fahrenheit, although if you do catch one of those showers, you will know about it. Things are set to change though as we head towards the end of the week. Friday, a deep area of low pressure towards Iceland. This trailing weather front with some very tightly packed isobars behind. That will drive in some very heavy rain as we go through Friday, possibly with some hail in there too. Lusty winds, but it looks like it turns quieter as we go towards Saturday. Take care.
Greater Anglia sponsors ITV Anglia Weather.
And that's it from us tonight. I'll be back with the late news after news at 10.
But from the team here at ITV News Anglia, on the day the nation reflects on 1 year of the pandemic. Thanks for watching. Good night.
ITV News in the Channel Islands with James Webster and Claire Burton.
Hello, welcome to ITV News.
The top stories on Channel tonight. Calls for an independent inquiry into the Channel Islands air search. It follows claims of mismanagement after a staff exodus last year.
Any organisation that doesn't learn from its mistakes is never going to get better.
But why now? Hamish will be here with the details.
Also on the programme, Guernsey's secondary school saga takes another turn.
As Jersey's charities celebrate their 50th anniversary, fears for their future in a post-COVID world.
And we've been to visit a quiet piece of land that's becoming a hive of activity to nature.
Good evening. We start tonight with a special report into the Channel Islands air search. Under normal circumstances, if a company was to lose 2/3 of its staff in one go, it would result in soul-searching and tough questions. But when the charity had that exact experience last May, there was no investigation.
But now a Guernsey States member has added his voice to calls for an independent inquiry into why so many staff were fired or resigned. Deputy Chris Blinn says people need answers and accusations of mismanagement should be looked into properly.
But the charity is refusing to engage with an inquiry and says it has moved on. Hamish O'Skerry has this exclusive report.
They are the eyes in the sky for our search and rescue services. But after a tumultuous year for Channel Islands air search, there are now calls instead for eyes to turn to the management of the charity itself.
I love the service, always have loved the service. Its health is my primary concern.
Mike Tidd was suspended last year for his part in the dispute with senior management before age forced him to retire after 27 years of service to Channel Islands air search.
What was done in such a bad way that we ended up with 2/3 of the crew resigning from the service. They've never acknowledged that mistakes were made. They've never learnt from their mistakes, and any organisation that doesn't learn from its mistakes is never going to get better.
How worried are you about the future of the service then?
Very, very. It's a charity. It relies on public funding, and the public are entitled to know that it's being properly run.
It's not the first time the charity's management has been questioned. In November 2013, their plane crashed in Jersey, though thankfully no one was seriously hurt. The Air Accident Investigation Branch's report into that crash said it had identified a number of weaknesses within the organisation's operational procedures and practices. Fundraising and delivering a replacement plane took more than 6 years at a cost of more than £2 million. Internal documents seen by ITV News show disputes between some crew members and senior management arose from differing opinions on training programmes for the aircraft and fitting new search equipment. Eventually those disputes led to a complete breakdown of relations. Channel Islands air search lost 14 of its crew last year, either after being fired or resigning in protest. The charity said at the time that although harmony had broken down within the crew, that the service was still fully operational. But those calling for an independent inquiry now are concerned that lessons haven't been learned.
I speak on behalf of 4 past presidents of the Lions Club, bearing in mind that the Lions Club were the initial funders of CIA. When I speak to the trustees, they say all the problems are overcome and everything is very, very good and moving forward. So why not support the idea of an independent public inquiry?
And tonight, a sitting deputy has joined the calls for that inquiry. Chris Blinn had served on the air search crew for 6 years before being one of those to resign last year.
It's all about governance and transparency. This is what we're always saying, within the States of Guernsey. I think the same thing should apply to this. Even though it's a charity, it should still the same governance. So we need to see how it was done. It's not about getting into the politics or the people or the individuals here. It's just about getting answers from an independent panel to look through the whole process and to make sure